In true 80s fashion, it is a terrifying children's movie. Hey everyone, it's Natalie, also known as Knitty Natty. Welcome to episode 151 of the Love in Stitches podcast. Today is like a gorgeous, bright, sunny day. The sun is like right here in my eyes, so if I'm like, kind of squinting and stuff, that's why. I've got our sheer shades down, but it's still very, very bright. I can look at the camera fine, but barely look at myself in the what's it called? I don't know, viewer thing to make sure everything looks good, but I think I got it all lined up and ready before we got started. I'm not wearing anything knitting related today, and I don't think there's anything really super important to start this off with. I do surprisingly have a finished object today, which I feel like I even shocked myself on. I have made so much progress on my whips, and we're going to do a little impromptu Q&A later on in the podcast. So with all that said, let's get started. So I have a finished object today. If you had asked me last week if I would have a finished object to start this week, I would have said, no way. But sometimes projects just get you and you just start knitting on them, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, I'm like this close to finishing it. If I just power through, I can get it done. And that's what happened here with this muscle burrow hat. So I can't wait to show this off. I haven't blocked it yet. You can see I've still got the stitch markers in there from last week. So where my cute little pumpkin is where I was last week on this hat, and then I did pretty much half of a hat in the last week. So this is the Muscle Burrow hat by Isolde Teague, although I have made some tweaks and changes to it. I just finished another one of these a couple weeks ago where I made it to pattern, but a little bit longer, so I had lots of folding up and everything to do. This one was the opposite in that it was much shorter, and I made it so that it's not slouchy at all because I'm working with limited yarn. So I didn't bring the solid green over, which is this one, but I did bring over my variegated. I've still got plenty of this left. So what I'm trying to do here is make myself and my husband Kent matching hats for the Dallas Stars. This is a custom dyed Dallas Stars colorway from Rain's Obsessive Stitchery. And so I named these two colors Victory Park and the Hanger, which are both, this is a neighborhood that the arena is in, and then the Hanger is like the shop within the arena, American Airlines Arena, where the Dallas Stars hockey team plays. So let's check this out together. I did a little try on last night, but I finished this around 9:30 p.m. last night, and I didn't want to block it because I knew it wouldn't be dry by the time I filmed this morning, which it is actually 9:30 a.m. So exactly 12 hours later. It wouldn't have dried in that time, though these do dry pretty fast. But yeah, I wanted to be able to try it on and show it on the podcast, therefore it hasn't been blocked yet. So I expect a little bit of a different fit once I really get it blocked. But let's try it on here together. So I made some changes. I'm taking all my markers out here. I made some changes to this hat in that I did the whole first half in a 1x1 rib. Now, in order to do that, I did that on the increase side. So you start the hat at one end, you increase, you work straight, and then you decrease at the other end. So I did the rib side, on the ribbing on the increase end because the green I have a limited amount of, and I wanted to make sure I only used about half of what I had, less than half. So then I could match it on this other side where I've got plenty of yarn. So I think I ended up using around 34 grams here, and I haven't yet weighed my yarn here, but I'm guessing it's similar, maybe a little less, because I don't think stockinette takes quite as much yarn as ribbing, just because you're having to go back and forth with knits and purls. But in order to get that ribbing in between, I kept the first and second stitch in knit, and then everything else I just like incorporated into the 1x1 rib pattern, and I think it turned out really good. Like I think the crown looks nice. At first I wasn't sure how that would look, but I think it turned out looking good. The rest of the hat is all just according to plan. So yeah, ribbing on one half, and then I made it short so that it doesn't have any slouch because I didn't have enough yarn, and then I started on the variegated. Now I am like not very good at determining like what does the yarn look like versus what is it gonna look like when I knit it up. I have used this yarn for socks before, and see how at the top it's like very micro stripey? That's how my socks were, because of course they had fewer stitches on them. And so with fewer stitches, those color like repeats or whatever in the yarn are going to be occurring more frequently, like on top of each other. I'm not explaining this super well, but in the socks it comes out stripy, and this yarn is dyed for socks. So when you expand that to like 3 times or 2 times the number of stitches, I was so surprised to get a spiral. So it's pretty cool. I wasn't sure if I liked it. And then as it spiraled more, it really grew on me. So it's kind of wild, but what the yarn looks like is it's like little bits of white, and then it's like a much longer segment of green, another little bit of white, a long segment of black, a little bit of white, long segment of green, a little bit of white, long segment of black. Okay, hold on. Here comes an ambulance. So if you ever have a yarn that looks like this, where it has like longer segments and shorter segments, then maybe it might behave like so. So then what was happening here is as I was working in the round, the color, the stitches that would be in that color would like shift forward every round. So like as I was knitting around with the white, like on one row, the white stitches would be here. On the next row, they'd shift forward by like 4 or 5 stitches, and then 4 or 5 stitches, and then 4 or 5 stitches. And so that's what creates like this spiral, which is really wild and not what I expected at all. Now, I'm not 100% sure I do love this. Like I said, the spiral did grow on me, but then when I did the top and I got fewer stitches again, it started to come out differently. And so I'm not so certain I love how that is a mismatch here. Now, if I had more of the solid green yarn, I probably would have just switched to a solid color, but because that's the one that I'm limited on, I can't use any extra of that, so I'm just leaving this be for now. I do know that a couple people have said they've used a variegated yarn paired with a solid color yarn and done helical knitting, which is 1 row stripes. And so when you add in that like 1 row of solid, then 1 row of variegated, it breaks up this spiraling pattern and makes it more cohesive overall. And so I kind of wish I had that like option, but I don't. But what I do have the option to do, and what I'm thinking of, like just started thinking about this today, is that for the next hat, when I make Kent's, this one's mine, I could actually split this in half and try to use the 2 variegated yarns together and see if it comes out to like a more cohesive look. And if that works, then I could go back and re-knit this portion if I like the way that it looks. I'm not 100% sure yet. These are not things that I need like done right away, these hats. It's more important to me to like use this special custom dyed yarn in something that I'm actually going to love and wear. So if it takes a couple tries to get it right, then that's okay. So let's go ahead and put these together and so you can see what it looks like, because I'm pretty pleased with how the rib and the stockinette work together. So you take the hat, you fold one part of it inside the other. It's so clear to see now when they're like 2 completely different colors. I feel like I didn't 100% nail like getting these the same length, but I'm gonna see what happens when I block it, because they are like really close on rows, but I'm not 100% sure I got it exactly right. So I think this turned out pretty darn cool. Right now it's feeling like there's extra fabric like inside this part. And then when I turn it this way, it's almost feeling like I didn't do enough rib rows, which I'm kind of, I don't know, like I'm a little surprised because I did a little longer on the rib, but who knows. So here, let's give it a try on. So I didn't make it slouchy at all. There's no extra. I think it folds over pretty nicely. I mean, you can like just peek at that other color a little bit. And so yeah, I don't like love how this looks on, especially as a close fitted hat. Maybe if it was a little longer, I would like it a little better. So I'm kind of like eh on that part of it. But when you flip it the other way and you get this ribbed version, it is so nice. The rib seems to like come down further, like it kind of is the one that like rolls over onto the stockinette side, and maybe that's part of the issue of feeling like there's extra material, because it like, I don't know, because like the rib kind of takes over. I don't know. It's actually fine, honestly, once I get it on. I do like the ribbed version of it, and you can see like just a little bit, it's peeking out, which is so nice. So overall, I think I'm learning a couple things. One is, I'm not sure I love like a completely close fitting hat. I think I like the slouchy version a little bit more, which is fine. And then two, I'm not so keen on the way that the spiraling looks like on my head. Sorry, there's like a, there we go, a stray piece of hair. My hair is like not even dry yet from my shower this morning, but I wanted it to be clean for the podcast. So yeah, I'm not so certain of if this was a 100% success, but I did learn a lot from it, and I'm going to use that as I make Kent's hat, and then from there I can always come back to this one. Will I? I don't know. I think it's like a 50-50. Like past Natalie, absolutely not. Would like never go back and redo something. Just like be mad that it like doesn't work for me and like not wear it and then just eventually get rid of it. But like now that I'm in kind of like a different space with my knitting, I'm okay taking a little more time and thinking about it and going, you know what? I can come back to it. I could rip it back. Like if I did have to rip this back, like, or if I did find a better way to do the variegated yarn that I liked more, and I took this portion back, that would then give me the opportunity to make it a little longer before going on if I have more yarn left, which I probably won't. So there's not really a reason for me to like live on that dream. But anyway, and then I know that I could, if I wanted to, make this side longer and fold it like maybe like here. And what that would do is it would give me a kind of like a brim or like this look with the rib on top. But that's not really something that I was looking for. I was really looking for like two distinctly different hats when you fold it up. But that's what's so fun about this pattern is there are so many different options. These like ribbed and like changing colors options are not something laid out in the pattern, at least that I'm aware of. I have not looked super closely at the newer version of the pattern. But if you look through like the Ravelry project pages, people do so many fun and different things with them. So let me know what you think about this side of things and the ribbed side of things. I'm definitely encouraged to make another version that's maybe slouchy and maybe even just a solid one color all the way through, but that has ribbing on one side and stockinette on the other, because both are just a really nice look, I think. I know too that I probably could have done the ribbing and the variegated and that would have broken things up, but I really, really, really like how this ribbing and the solid looks. So there's my Musselburgh hat. I am like 75% satisfied, but I am like 0% upset about the time and energy that I've put into this so far, because now I know what I can try for the future, and I can always come back and make changes to this one. Next up, we have a couple of whips. First, I want to show you my Alpine Glow sweater because I have been working so hard on it and I'm so pleased with how it came out. Honestly, the knitting has been much more like a breeze than the choosing the yarn, which was a process. But I am so pleased with how it's coming out so far. So here is my Alpine Glow by Andrea Mowry, and I finished the body. Oh my gosh. Okay, so last week I was like halfway through the body right here with my sparkly little stitch marker from Black Pearl Magic, and now I'm totally done and bound off. I'm like not attached to yarn at all here, which is really fun for trying things on. But yeah, it is coming out just better than I could have imagined, and I'm so happy with it, and I'm so glad that it was like I was patient. I'm so glad that I was patient, and I'm so glad for all the things that have happened like with my knitting in the past that made me be patient for this and to wait and to pick these colors because I think they look so good. Real quick, I'm just going to show the yarn because I don't think I did last time, but all my projects are always linked below, and I do have the yarn details, colors, and all of that in there. So my main color is from Farmer's Daughter Fibers. It is Recollect, which is 100% white and black Rem Brulee, which is a wool. And the colorway is Hey Victor. It's a really deep purpley or blue kind of color that really does read black. My top color is also a Farmer's Daughter Fibers. This one is a similar base. It's called Reminisce because it is a, like, I think it's just like a white base, and that one is called Bitter Root. For my spin cycle, I am using this is the only one I'm using the called for yarn, Spin Cycle, what is it called? Dyed in the Wool, and my color is Unicorn. And then lastly, the one that brought it all together, my beautiful fuzzy pink, is from the Little Wolf Knits, and it is a Surrey Alpaca Silk lace weight called Ballet Slippers. All right, so now that that's out of the way, let's look at this a little bit more deeply. So, of course, I did more try-ons as I knit this sweater. I am always learning things about knitting sweaters and my body and how I like things to fit. And because I don't often remake a sweater, I can't even really think of any sweaters that I've made more than once. I need to try things on. Of course, as I make more sweaters that are similar in construction or gauge or use similar yarns, I can kind of use that information, but this is something pretty new to me, this yarn, this fit, this using circular yokes. I haven't done a ton of those, so it's important for me to really try things on. I have found that with a circular yoke sweater, I don't have to knit the body quite as long because the yoke itself falls further away from my neck than like a raglan. So also, like, I think tops are getting shorter and I'm just getting more comfortable with that. So it's kind of nice because it feels like cheating. I feel like I'm doing so much less knitting. I would say, like, in the past, I would always knit my sweater bodies to like maybe 15 inches. And I think that when I do a circular yoke, it's more like 12 total inches, just because the yoke itself, again, drops like lower on the body and there's just not as far of a distance from there to like my hip bones and where I need to go. So lots of color work this week, and then this beautiful corrugated ribbing. I did do the Tubular Bind Off, which is like a 100-step process, but I think it's worth it. I'm not sure if you're able to see that because the sun is like right in my face right now and I can't really see. But a tubular bind off is a special kind of bind off that gives a really finished look to it. And this particular one, because it's 2x2 rib, has like 3 setup rows and then it's like a sewn bind off with a needle, and I think it's worth it. It looks really nice. So yeah, I love it. So I think we should try this on again together now that the body is all done, because I did try it on right before I did the rib, but I haven't tried it on since then. Now, I talked last week about these circular stitch holders, and I did have them linked in the last podcast. I do have them linked down below now, so you can grab them like from Amazon or like go to your local yarn store. But these are the Clover circular stitch holders that are holding all the live stitches of my sleeve. So when I try things on, I just pull that out and I pull the stitches up so that this little stopper is hitting the stitches and they're all spread out. And so I have plenty of like room for things to stretch. So let me do that for both so that they're ready to go. And then let's try this thing on. Okay. So again, the sleeves are the only thing that's live. Everything else is fine. So I'm gonna put this on and we'll take a look at it together. So I'm not 100% sure about my neckline right now because it is doing like a funny like sticking up thing because I did modify it, but I'm waiting until I get the sleeves and the body and it blocked again to really make a decision. But I do think I'm gonna have to come back in here and either knit a longer neck, like that's the way it was intended. It was a longer neck, which would make it cinch in more and like probably not do what it's doing right now. Or blocking will fix it and it will like lay down more, or maybe I need a couple of decreases. I don't really know yet, but just know that like I'm aware that it's a little bit big and I might have to make some changes to it. But other than that, I think it's looking really good. So I do have this portion of the sweater already blocked. Before I split for the sleeves, I put it onto a try-it-on tubing, soaked the whole sweater, let it dry for a couple days, and then tried it on and saw that it wasn't quite long enough yet and I needed to add an extra inch. I think I talked about that, must have been 2 podcasts ago, so go check that out. But yeah, so I think I made a good decision on the yoke itself because this armhole feels comfortable and good. And then yeah, just know that it's blocked here down, but not here down. So I'm probably gonna get a little more like length, just a slightly bit more length and a little more looseness and everything. But I think it's looking pretty darn good. I really like it. And I'm just happy like with the colors. It's so funny because I do hope that like it's kind of like looking like broad and skinny right now. So I'm hoping that when I get sleeves, it won't quite look like that. But Kent said to me, he was like, I think that that's the best thing that you've ever made. And so he really is a fan of this Alpine Glow sweater and I'm a fan. I'm having a fun time. So yay. Okay. So I'll just leave it on while I talk about the rest of what I need to say about this, which is not too much. But my goal for this week was to, oh my gosh, itchy nose. My goal for this week was to finish the body. And I have a whole video talking about my knitting plans for the next few months that goes into detail. That came out on Tuesday, so you can go and watch that if you haven't already. But just kind of as an overview, like I do like to plan out my knitting, and I had the Alpine Glow kind of planned out a little bit. Like I wanted to do the body this past week, I wanted to do a sleeve this coming week, and then another sleeve next week, and that would get me to my goal of finishing this by September. But I wasn't sure like how exactly it was going to go, if I was going to like have more time or less time. And I do have another sweater that I'm working on and wanting to finish by Rhinebeck. So I knew I was gonna have to come and integrate that in somehow. So when I finished the body of this, I finished it on Friday. I was like, oh, I have the weekend now to switch over my thinking and work on my other sweater project. And so instead of like continuing just to work on this and like try to work on my other sweater here and there, I said, I completed, check. I did what I needed to do this week on the Alpine Glow. I feel good about it. It's done. It's finished to that point. And I set it aside and I switched gears to my other project. And I don't know, I'm sharing that because it feels nice to like do that as a someone who is kind of a perfectionist and like has a hard time ever feeling like done unless it's like 100% done. It's nice to have checkpoints like along the way and go, okay, no, I met that goal. And now I can like, I don't have to worry about the sweater and think about it or feel like I should be working on it. I can completely move over to something else. And I will show that project in just a second. But since the body is done, I'm now working on sleeve number 1. I don't know which one I'm gonna do first. One of these. I'm gonna do sleeve 1 for 1 week and then sleeve 2 for the next week. I'm just gonna knit these sleeves separately because I kind of like to figure out exactly how I wanna do it. I feel like sleeve 1 takes twice as long as sleeve 2. Like once you already have the sleeve kinks worked out and exactly where you're going to decrease and all of that stuff, the next one just zooms on by. So I'm planning to spend like the first, let's see, 18th, 19th, 20th, like the first 4 days of this week working on sleeve number 1 and hopefully getting that done and leaving myself the second half of the week to switch gears again over to my other sweater. So speaking of the sweater, let me grab that and we'll talk about that next. This is the Nurtured sweater by Andrea Mowry, and I am very proud of myself for making some decent progress over the weekend. I finished up Alpine Glow, my goal for Alpine Glow on Friday, and that left me just free on Saturday and Sunday to work on this as much as I could. So I have my little football marker here from Ann Tudor. It's a glass football, which is really cool. So I was way down here. Basically, I'd just done the cuffs, and now I am about not quite halfway through the sleeves. Arms are long. I don't know exactly how long my arms are, but I do know that sleeves are deceiving and that you feel like you're like, look, on the Alpine Glow, I've just done the body, I just have sleeves left. You're like, oh, just sleeves, you know, it's not gonna take me that long. Sleeves are like at least a third of the entire sweater. They are a lot of knitting and arms are very long. So what's interesting about the Nurtured sweater is that you start with the sleeves. I guess you don't technically have to, you could knit the body first, but the way that it's constructed is you are bottom up everything. So bottom up sleeves, bottom up body, and then at the raglan, you join. I think it's a raglan. I've never knit a sweater this way, so I am so fascinated to see how it all comes together. But yeah, that's what it seems to be. So like sleeves and then body, and then like as you knit this like yoked, the raglan part, it like all the stitches come together rather than my Alpine Glow, which is like the opposite, where you knit it down, you leave sleeves, you leave stitches for the sleeves, and then you come and knit the sleeves after the body. So it's going to be very interesting. I'm not 100% sure, you know, how I'm going to make sure everything is going to fit and be long enough, but I'm going to use the knowledge that I have, plus what's in the pattern, to help me make a good decision. So let me talk yarn real quick, and then I'm going to have a few more things to say. I am using Yin Yang Loop. I'm sorry, I think actually that it's Loop Yin Yang. I get confused because that's on top, but I think Loop is the company and Yin Yang is the yarn. The yin and the yang, oh sorry, the colorway is Makeup. The yin and the yang comes from the actual way it's like the yarn is constructed, if you can see that there. So my yarn has 1 strand of pink and 3 strands of this taupe color, and then there is an opposite that has 3 strands of pink and 1 strand of the taupe color, and they look really, really cool, and that's the yin and the yang. So yeah, I got some questions about this sweater on Instagram. One was like, why are you knitting the sleeves first? Which I think I just explained. It's a bottom up sweater, and literally the first section of the sweater is sleeves. So I could have done the body first, but I thought sleeves were a good thing to get out of the way. So sleeves I will get to a certain point. I'm guessing like right here, and then I'll knit the body, and then it will all come back together. But other questions were, am I knitting sleeves 2 at a time? And the answer is yes. I am doing 2 at a time sleeves. They are completely separate. They have their own balls of yarn. This is the 2 skein float tote here, which has been very helpful to keep things together. I put the project into the top of it and then just roll it up to like carry it like from room to room or whatever, and then I roll it down when I'm actually working on it. But what I like about it is that not only does it hold on to my yarns, but I can also do like that flip back and forth thing so that my yarns don't get all tangled around each other. Okay, back to the sweater pattern. So yes, I'm doing 2 at a time. I'm doing 2 at a time on 2 circular needles. Don't love 2 circular needles. Like I do love it, but it's also like kind of fussy because it's a lot of needles. What's bothering me the most is actually just the sound of the needles like clacking together while I'm working, which it would seem like a small thing, but I'm definitely sensitive to things like that, like noises and textures and smells, just like all the things. So like the needles like clacking together while I'm working, I'm kind of like, it's kind of grinding my gears a little bit. But I can handle it. I do think it's worth it having both sleeves done at once. The pattern does not say to do both sleeves at once. It just says make 2. But for me, I think this is gonna be, I'm gonna like thank myself for this later, because I won't go through one whole sleeve and then be like, oh, now I gotta match it on the other one and do exactly the same. 2 sleeves are exactly the same, and they're also done at the same time, which is gonna be really, really nice. Now, reason that I'm not doing two at a time on this sweater is, well, a couple reasons. One, I don't think it's gonna be quite as comfortable to like get these arranged 2 at a time when there's a body of a sweater to contend with. The other thing is that with a bottom, like a top down sleeve, I do want that opportunity to like try things on and make adjustments. And I think it will just be easier if I just have the one sleeve going. You might hear Toaster a little bit. We have people working in the hallway, like changing the lighting, changing the wallpaper, changing the carpet, like all kinds of stuff last week and this week. So it's a little crazy, but he's been really good about it. He's been quite good. Anyway, so I'm not planning to do Alpine Glow 2 at a time, but this seemed like the right opportunity. It's basically like knitting 2 at a time socks, which I know people do all of the time. And I don't do it for socks because I like socks to be portable. And so bringing one ball of yarn, one set of needles around with me is much easier. But for something like this where I'm going to be seated anyway, it's a texture pattern, I need to like concentrate on it. It's been totally fine. I did, however, get some new cords. I was at a yarn store this weekend and I thought, you know what? I think it could be really nice to actually do this on magic loop instead of 2 sets of needles. That would eliminate the clinking problem. And I think it might be just a touch faster for me personally, because I'm so much more comfortable with magic loop than I am with the 2 circular needles. And by the way, I don't know if you can see, yeah, I've got like a set of needles that's tan and a set of needles that's rainbow. That's because I don't have 2 sets of size 7, which is the needle I need for this sweater. And so what I have is my size 7s are 1 needle tip of each needle, and they're the ones that I'm always knitting with, my working needle. The tan ones, are size 6, and they're my feeder needle. So they're the ones that are always like going underneath the stitches. And because of the way knitting works, as long as your working needle is the correct size, your feeder needle could be the same size or a little bit smaller, and your stitches are still gonna come out just fine. So that's how I'm managing like not having duplicate tips, but being able to still knit with 2 needles. This is a lot of technical stuff. But anyway, if I switch over to magic loop, I will just use my 2 size 7s. I just have 2 needle tips. I'll just have 1 needle and I can still do the same thing 2 at a time. But I needed a long cord. So when I was in Maryland, we stopped at a yarn shop that is called Clover Hill Yarn. And I got a 47-inch Knitter's Pride swivel cord. I haven't used it yet. Honestly, I was a little too tired yesterday to do much of anything when we got back. But I'm hoping that it will work. I don't know for sure. It is definitely, I think it's gonna be long enough, first of all. Yeah, I think that's like the perfect length. That's why I got a 47. It's definitely gonna be long enough to have space. It's definitely more flexible than these Knit Picks ones. Like they're just not, you can't really magic loop with them, or I would have, because I have long enough cords. It's just like they're not, like see how I have to, I'm not pushing like super hard, but like with the same amount of pressure on this one, it's like bending like just a little bit more. My favorite cords, of course, are Chagu, but I'm not really a huge metal needle person, so I wanted to try these. And the other thing that's cool about these is that that where they fasten like swivels. I know you can't really like tell, like swivels around, which makes things nice for magic loop. This set is fixed, but if you're a magic loop knitter, you know that like sometimes you'll like make a turn and then like your needle will be, what's the right word? Like there's torque on the needle and you have to like flip the whole cord and needle like within the stitches. But when you have a swivel, you can just okay, that one is not swiveling, so that's not good. Not a fan of that. These were only like $6, so I'm not super worried about it, but like, whatever. So this one swivels fine. Anyway, the needle tip itself can move instead of having to move the whole cord. So I am interested to try this. Now, I don't actually have Knitter's Pride needles. I have Knit Picks needles, but I've been able to use Knitter's Pride cords with Knit Picks needles before, so we'll see if it works. Stay tuned. I'll probably share that on Instagram, and if I'm not using these next week, it's because it didn't work. It didn't work well. I also, I think I'm done talking about this project. That's the Nurtured Sweater. I got a few more things at the store, so I figured I'd share that too. And so I also got a 20-inch cord. I would have gotten 24, but they just didn't have any more 24. So I also got a 20-inch cord, again, just to try it. 24-inch is the needle length that I knit with the majority of the time. So I thought, wow, it'd be really nice if I had more flexible cords and cords that swivel. It's just a lot more comfortable when you are knitting. So I grabbed those two to try out. I figured it's not a huge deal if they don't work out great, because again, they were only like $6 a piece. And I like to try, like, I thought it was a good time to like try some new things. I saw some of my friends in the membership were working with them and I'd never heard of it before. I also, it was like a needle moment. I also got myself 2 new Chaigu needles. Since I've been making so many muscle burrow hats using size 2 needles, I have been needing these a lot. And in my collection, my needles are pretty pared down, I would say. I have these older Adyemi metal needles for my 32-inch. So I use the 32-inch to do magic loop at the beginning and the end of the muscle burrow hat, where there's like the smaller circumference. We need a visual. Like the crown, basically, on both sides. And I've been using the Adyemi needles, which are like, okay, but again, it's a cord issue. The cord kinks up so much. And I've had these Adyemi needles for so long. I had 2 of them, and I was using switching then to a Chaigu 16-inch needle when I got to the main body part. And so I'm like, you know what? Needles are not super expensive. I think it's time for me to replace my 2 32-inch Adyemi needles with the Chaigu that are my favorite. So I went ahead and I was kind of like waiting because it wasn't a definite need. Like I could have just ordered them from like Amazon whenever, but they were working fine. I was like, the next time that I'm at a yarn store and like a local yarn store has them, I'm just gonna go ahead and get myself the 32-inch size 2. So now I have those. I'm probably just gonna take those Adyemi ones and donate them because I don't need 4 sets of size 2 needles. Whoops. But now I replace those. So I'm like, yay, treat myself to some new needles, some new things to try. And then, of course, I had to get some yarn. So I am always looking for unique yarns when I travel to different places. Something that's local or something that is a special color for that store or something that I just haven't seen anywhere else, even if it's not specific to that region. But at this store, and it is Clover Hill, I guess I didn't do like a good introduction on this. So we were going to Maryland and we decided to stop at Clover Hill Yarn Shop in Maryland. And the owner of the store is also a yarn dyer and had tons of her beautiful yarns there. And the yarn company is Tempting You Yarn. You might have seen it if you've been to Maryland Sheep and Wool or live in the area. I'm not sure where else they have their yarn. But this color was what the employees said, one of the most popular colors. It's just a really lovely, like neutral with speckles on it, and it knits up really, really beautifully. And it is called Sand Swept. And what was great, I thought, is they had so many different bases. They had mohair silk, they had lace, they had 2 different types of fingering, they had DK, they had single ply bulky, which I don't think you see a lot of. And so it was cool to just see all the different yarns in there. So I grabbed this one, and I'm going to be using this for a prize for something coming up because, again, I'm just really trying not to add to my stash right now, but I still love shopping for and collecting yarn, and I feel pretty lucky to be at a place where I can do that and get that shopping, satisfy that shopping need, support a local yarn store, and then turn around and be able to give this to somebody else because I'm very blessed to have already what I need. So that's what I got this for when I was shopping. I was like, what would somebody else like? What would be a nice, beautiful color, something special that I could still remember it from the trip, but then somebody else would like it. So that was the extent of my shopping there at Clover Hill Yarn. Okay, I think that's everything as far as projects go. I am looking forward to my knitting this week. One thing I did forget to mention is my goals, because I do have a 1 sleeve goal on the Alpine Glow, but on the Nurtured sweater, my goal is to finish both sleeves up to the point where they connect to the body by the end of the week. So I've got about 6 days to about 7 days. Got about 7 days to make 3 sleeves happen, 2 of which are almost halfway there. So I think it's a doable goal, but I'm switching gears over to Alpine Glow for the beginning of the week. Once that sleeve is done, I will come back to these and wrap these up at the end of the week. So you'll know next week if that was able to happen. This is one of those fun months where we actually have 5 Thursdays instead of 4. So usually in the 4th podcast of the month, I'm talking about my stash and kind of my goals and everything, but it's not the end of the month. It's only the 19th as I'm filming today. And so I thought it'd be fun to throw in a little Q&A segment. So a couple weeks ago on my Instagram, I asked everyone, what would you ask me when you first started following Knitty Natty? What were the things that you were curious about? Because I'm planning to make Instagram highlights where somebody, if they're new coming to my page, can go to an about me and frequently asked questions and things like that. So I thought I would take the top 3 questions from that poll and answer them here on the podcast. They're still going to go into my Instagram eventually when I get to it, but I thought that might be fun to just answer them here. Okay. So the number 1 question is, and has always been, I think, how did Toaster get his name? So Toaster is our dog who's usually in here with me, but today he's actually hanging out with Kent in the living room and barking at the people working in the hallway. But Toaster is our dog, and Kent actually got him before we got together. So Toaster's name is all Kent. Kent tells me that before he even got a dog, he always wanted to name the dog Toaster because of a movie from the 80s. It's also a book, a children's book, and it is called The Brave Little Toaster. In true 80s fashion, it is a terrifying children's movie where horrible things happen to these appliances and no child should watch it. It's kind of I feel the 80s and the 90s, early 90s too. It's why was there so much death in children's movies? It was a lot. But it is I remember watching that movie growing up and knew immediately when he told me what the Brave Little Toaster is, but that's literally it. Kent liked the Brave Little Toaster. He thought Toaster would be a cute name for the dog, and then when he got a dog, he named him Toaster, and now I can't imagine him being named anything else. The second most frequently asked question was kind of a 2-parter, why did you move to New York City and where do you live in New York City? So let's talk about the where first. So New York City, just in case you didn't know, because I did not know before I moved here. So New York City is comprised of 5 boroughs. When you think of New York City, most people think of Manhattan. So Manhattan is one of the boroughs, and then to the north of that is the Bronx, to the east of that is Queens and Brooklyn, and to the south of that is Staten Island. All of that is New York City, but most people, when they say New York City or the city, they mean Manhattan. So we live on Manhattan, or in Manhattan, I guess. We live in Manhattan or on Manhattan Island, and we are more specifically oh my gosh, words. We are more specifically in like Midtown. So we are pretty close to Times Square. Like Times Square is kind of like in the middle of the city, and that's pretty close to where we are. More specifically, I don't like to say too much just for like privacy reasons and just in case, but that's generally where we are. So when we say we live in New York City, we like mean it. We're like right in the heart of things. Why did we move to New York City? That's kind of like a trickier question. I mean, there's so many reasons why we moved here. There wasn't a need for us to move here. We didn't have jobs here. We didn't have family here. We didn't have like a real reason to be here, except that we wanted to. And it's still kind of crazy like that. I guess it's kind of crazy that we did that and just like moved here without really knowing exactly what it was going to be like. I had never been to New York City, and Ken had only visited when he was a teenager. So we were kind of operating on like dreams and like what we learned based off of YouTube. There was a YouTuber that we loved and followed all during the pandemic. Well, on the later half of the pandemic, once we started thinking about moving. His name is Cash Jordan, and he did apartment tours. And so it's really honestly because of him that we felt like it was doable to move to New York City, because one of the most important things is, you know, where am I going to live and can I afford to live there and all of those things. So that kind of encouraged us to do it. But I was already planning to quit my teaching job in Texas at the end of the school year, which was the 2020-2021 school year. I already had a goal to be able to support us with Knitty Natty and everything by the end of that school year, and that was already in my head. But I actually ended up leaving that job in the middle of the spring because we wanted to come move up to New York City, and we wanted to get in before prices started going back up, because during COVID, a lot of the pricing for apartments went down. So we feel very fortunate to, one, just be here and like be able to be here, to have the freedom to do that. We moved here because of a dream, and it wasn't like dreamy at first, to be honest, but it's starting to, it's already started, but like it is that way now, and we feel really lucky, and we're trying to enjoy every single second of it, because we're probably not going to be here for the long term. We're taking it year by year. So keep following along to see what adventure comes next. The last question that I saw several times was, how long have you been knitting? So I learned to knit when I was 13 years old. My grandmother taught me how to do the knit stitch and the purl stitch. Pretty much everything else I kind of either learned from other people or from books. This was pre-YouTube, so I learned a lot from others and just like being around others in a yarn shop and getting books from the library. I then learned to crochet from a friend when I was 16 years old, and that took a while to stick. It really felt uncomfortable for me to crochet, especially after I was starting to feel like more proficient in knitting. So 13 and 16, 13 for knitting, 16 for crochet, and I am 30 years old. So I'll let you do the math, but it's been a long time. I've been doing this a lot and in a concentrated way. So I feel like whenever somebody asks, how long have you been doing something, they're also asking like, in a way, like how long is it going to take me to get to that level? And I feel like if you learn to knit in this day and age, you have such an advantage of having so much technology, to go to YouTube and learn something, to watch somebody do something, to have communities online that kind of help you like just like know things. Like knowledge is power, and you don't know that you can do something until you see it sometimes. And so we have this benefit now of having social media and YouTube, and I know it has negative things too, but it kind of accelerates that process of learning. So if you're like, oh my gosh, it took Natalie like 17 years to be able to like know how to fit her sweaters. Well, okay, but I started when I was 18, like a preteen basically, so don't put that on yourself. I know people that started knitting like less than 2 years ago, and they're also making this sweater this year. So it's not about so much like time spent doing something, or maybe like years spent doing something, but more about like believing in yourself and what you choose to do and everything like that. So I hope those were some fun questions. And you know, there's lots of months that have 5 weeks in them, so we may do a fun Q&A in future episodes. So just make sure you're following on Instagram, because that's where I will post something to have you submit questions.
The Love and Stitches membership is an online community of knitters and crocheters from around the world. We have 2 to 3 online social events each month, daily member-led knit and crochet groups, and a 24/7 Discord community. We also have our own exclusive make-alongs, book club, swaps, and more. The membership will open for the last time this year on Tuesday, October 4th. Click the link below for more details.
It is finally almost time for Dfw Fiberfest. It is this week, so I think it starts on Friday, but it might start on Thursday. Actually, I don't know. I have the dates here. Dfw Fiberfest, which is in Irving, Texas, between Dallas and Fort Worth, is September 22nd through September 25th. So that would mean that it starts on Thursday. I'm going to be there on Friday, September 23rd. That is the only day that I am going to be there. I have a class in the morning. I think it's like a 9 to 12 class. And then I'm probably going to like take a break. And then I'm planning to go shop at the marketplace, film a vlog, and just like generally hang out in the marketplace for like the majority of the afternoon. I'll be there. Kent will be with me. And so come up and say hi. Definitely want to meet you. I don't have any specific like meet and greet plans. I'm not bringing anything with me. It's just, we're only there for one day. And so I want to get as much as I can out of it without like overtaxing myself to do anything too structured. Like I want to just be able to have a good time. I'm also going to the event on Friday night, which I'm not sure when that starts. I need to kind of get that sorted out, because I think I'm going to be left with like at least an hour to 2 hour time gap where I have nowhere to be and nothing to do, and Kent's no longer going to be with me at that time. So if you're going to Fiberfest and you're going to be shopping Friday and then going to the event on Friday night, what are you doing in between, and can I come hang out with you? I'm going to have knitting. I'm going to need something to do to pass the time, and I don't really want to just like go over to the venue early and like sit there by myself. So let me know. I'll figure something out. I'm not super worried about it, but it just kind of hit me that like, wait a second, there's a gap. There's a time gap. Yeah. It's gonna be a long day. I'm gonna like pack myself like snacks and knitting and all kinds of things so that I can feel sustained and ready for all of the fun. I'm super, super excited. And we are going to Texas for, well, like mainly we're going for Dfw Fiberfest. That's why we picked this time, but there's other things that need our attention in Texas, like a storage unit that we have. So it's gonna be partially like a work on things in the storage unit trip and visit friends, because we used to live in Dallas. And then this whole Friday is going to be all about Fiberfest. So I'm excited for that. The next thing that's coming up very quickly is Rhinebeck. Rhinebeck is in Rhinebeck, New York in a few weeks, October 15th and 16th, with pre-events starting on October 14th. So I'm going to be at Cakepalooza on Friday morning. I'm going to be at Woolloom Folk on Friday afternoon, and then I will be at Rhinebeck all day Saturday and probably a good portion of the day on Sunday. So again, come up and say hi. I haven't decided yet if I'm gonna like get something to hand out like I did last year. I had buttons, but I don't really want to do buttons again. So I might do something different, or it also might be too late. I might have waited too long. But regardless, come up, say hi, let's take a picture. I will have some sort of meetup on Saturday, but I'm waiting until like the main, like major people make their times, and then I'm gonna kind of go around that. Especially since I'm making Alpine Glow this year, and Andrew Mowry typically does a meetup. I want to be able to participate and do that, and then also like have my own like smaller thing on the side. So just stay tuned. I'll probably have that announced much closer to time. And then this week's video was a Rhinebeck / fall knitting plans, everything from basically now until December 1st. So here's a little sneak peek of that video. So I want to make some sweaters for Rhinebeck, so that's the first date that I have in mind. The second thing is the West Knits MCAL, which is a shawl knit along, and that actually starts on October, I think it's the 6th of October. So I want to make sure I have everything ready to do that as well. And then the other thing is just Advent coming up on December 1st. When I sit down to plan, I have a few things with me. So the first one is this sweater. I don't even know, it says Jennifer Lopez. I feel like this was like a Kohl's purchase or something. This weekend we traveled to Maryland for an SMU football game. So Kent, my husband, went to Southern Methodist University, a university in Dallas, Texas, and they were up here in Maryland in College Park playing University of Maryland. So we used to travel at least once a year for football games. And so it's really fun that that is finally something we're able to do again post-COVID. So I was excited about it. I love football, but I'm nowhere near as into it as Kent is. But I like everything about just like going on a trip and like the excitement of a game and, you know, trying out like the local bars and like finding local beers, and of course finding local yarn shops and local coffee shops and local restaurants. I mean, just all the things that come with like going somewhere for a game and like learning about a microculture, which like university campuses tend to be, is just so much fun. So we really enjoyed the Maryland game. The Maryland fans were incredibly nice. The people of Maryland were really nice. I'm surprised, I guess, because for one reason, this is terrible. If you're from Maryland, like I know that you're nice and like you're a lovely person, but like it's just funny how you like develop ideas about certain states or regions from like basically no good reason, but here's mine. So coming from Tennessee, I thought like everyone in the South was super nice and everyone in the North was like mean, right? Because that's the like limited point of view that I had when I lived in Tennessee. And so that's not true at all, literally not at all. But then I always have thought of Maryland as just like a northern state. And so people in New York, people in New Jersey, people in Pennsylvania, there's like an attitude a little bit like people in New York are extremely nice, but they're not gonna like BS around. Like there's a time limit on things. Like if you don't really need help, like stop bothering me, get out of my way, which I'm like actually very comfortable with now. And so I kind of thought that like Maryland would be a part of that culture, but like the second we got into Maryland, it was like, I felt like I was in the South a little bit. Like everyone was nice. Like people in Maryland, or at least the part of Maryland we were in, didn't have like stronger accents like people in New Jersey and Pennsylvania and New York do. It really just kind of felt like we were in Virginia, which I know is really close to Maryland. So it was just interesting. I guess not something that I expected from Maryland, and something that was just, I don't know, everyone just felt like really like over the top friendly, like the feelings that I get when I go to Tennessee or to Florida or to Texas or to whatever, you know, states that you would typically call like the South. So I don't know, please don't judge me from this assessment. This is just what happened this weekend. And like, I don't outright expect people to be super nice to me. So when they are, it's like cherry on top. Like, I just think it's like really great and really, they were really friendly. So we had a great time. We went to like some of the local bars around the college campus, and it was pretty quiet. It wasn't like a huge tailgate scene like we've seen at some other places. And then we kind of moved over to like the actual tailgating area, and it got a little busier. And then we went into the game, and it was actually pretty full. So the game was really fun. It was neck and neck until the very end. Unfortunately, our team lost. But again, the fans were like so gracious. The coolest thing was that I was knitting during the game on my hat, which has fallen on the floor. I was knitting on my hat, and 2 people stopped me and asked me about it. And people ask me about knitting sometimes, but this is what I'm saying. Like, the people in Maryland were so nice. Genuinely. It was 2 guys too, which I also didn't expect. I don't know. That's not usually who will say something to me. And the first guy was like, "Are you knitting?" And I was like, "Yeah." And that's usually where the conversation stops. But he was like, "That is so cool." And like, we talked about what I was making, and it made me feel really good. Another hour later, I get like a tap on my shoulder, and I turn around, and it's another person, another guy who's like, "What are you making?" And like, him and his girlfriend or wife or whatever were like both looking at me, and I was like, "Oh, I'm making a hat. Is that what you had guessed?" And he was like, "No, we had no idea." Because at that point, it looked like it was like this. It was like this very weird, like, there we go. It was like this very weird looking thing. And so I explained to him, like, you fold it up, and they're like, "Wow, that is so cool." So this was just one isolated experience. But if you're from Maryland, thank you for being so nice. And the University of Maryland was great to us as like outsider fans, and we just really enjoyed it. And then we went to a yarn store, of course, on the way down. This was a super quick trip. We left Saturday morning. We stopped at the yarn store on our way down to College Park, Clover Hill, which is where I got the yarn and the needles and everything. And I will have a little bit more about that coming up in a future vlog. But we quickly got to our hotel, dropped our bags, and went straight to campus. And the game was at 7:30. And the next day we woke up, we stopped at a local coffee shop, a local bagel shop, and then we came back to New York City. So it was a really quick trip. I think we actually spent more time going to the airport to pick up our rental car, driving it back, getting on the transit and everything than we did driving to Maryland. It was a lot for one small weekend, but it was worth it to just get to go and experience something different. And I feel lucky to have been able to do it. Now coming up, we're leaving. Oh, actually, what time is it? Okay, in 30 minutes, I need to check in for my flight tomorrow. But we are leaving tomorrow morning. So by the time you see this, I'm already going to be in Texas, but we are flying to Dallas a couple of days before Fiberfest, because this trip is not just about Fiberfest. We're going to work on our storage unit. We're going to go to Fiberfest. We're going to also get to go to another SMU game, this time at home, which is really exciting that the timing all lined up like that. So Friday is Fiberfest, and Saturday I'm not going to Fiberfest because I'm going to be going to an SMU football game. It's supposed to be 95 degrees, and it's an 11 a.m. game. So I am petrified of being hot. How hot we're going to be, I don't even know if I'll be able to knit in that weather. That sounds pretty miserable. I'm going to be sunscreened up, bringing towels, because it's going to be rough. But I'm excited to go to Dallas. I'm excited to see our friends. I'm excited to go to Fiberfest. And I am mostly excited to eat a lot of my favorite Texas foods that I can't get here in New York City. All right, that's enough about all that. Watching, listening, and reading. I am still reading the same books. The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adyemi. Not a lot of reading happened this week. Normally I read mostly in the morning. I do 30 minutes of reading Monday through Friday while I knit on a project. But because I was really focused on working on my sweater this week, I was working on the corrugated ribbing. And I can't knit and read when I do that. I have to have simple knitting when I'm knitting and reading. So 2 mornings last week, I watched YouTube instead. So book reading has been a little slower, but that's all right. The knitting has been a little faster. Weekly wins. So I am celebrating this week that we are able to travel without too much work stress. This is such a big thing as somebody who, you would think as somebody who like gets to pick my hours, it would be just so easy to just like go out of town and like not worry about anything. But actually it's a lot harder because when I would leave my teaching job, I had other people that were there to like do the job if I forgot something. Like, of course I had to prepare and set up, but it wasn't like if something happened, I was the only one that could do it. So I am celebrating this week that I am now to a point, because I've been doing so much work this year, working so hard on planning and getting things done ahead and just focusing on what's important, that I was able to travel this weekend. I didn't even bring my computer. Everything was good. Everything was set up. I was able to wake up this morning and focus on just the podcast because my emails were scheduled. Everything was ready to go. And then the fact that I'm going out of town tomorrow, I actually don't really feel that stressed about because I planned everything ahead. I know exactly what I need to do today. I'm leaving myself enough time to pack. And these sound like small things, but they are so huge for us to kind of make what we are desiring, what we were wanting for our lives happen. And we love to travel and we want to travel more. And so being able to like be home and like focus and like really do everything that needs to be done and have it planned and prepped ahead of time, and then be able to go out of town and like enjoy and not like, I used to go out of town even end of last year, like Christmas vacation. I tried to take a Christmas vacation and I would be like answering emails for like hours, which is silly. My emails don't need to take that long, and like always feeling like I needed to do something and never fully in the moment. And so this is such a big win for me, even though it seems maybe like a smaller thing. On top of that, I'm also like excited because I am all ready for the membership to open on October 4th. And I am like, if the membership opened tomorrow, I'd be like, come on everybody, I'm ready for you. And it has taken me almost 2 years to get to that point where like I'm feeling really good about like the behind the scenes things. The membership has of course like grown and improved in itself too, but just like all the prep, all the emails, getting everything ready, I feel really good about having that all done despite going out of town for like many days during the time I would normally have to prep. So proud of myself, and I hope that you can look back on your week and recognize and celebrate yourself for things that you did, big and small, that are hard for you or that are big improvements for you. Always celebrate yourself. All right, I think that's everything. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!
The Definition collection is back with 6 brand new designs. You can shop this collection on my spread shop, which will be linked down below, from now through October 21st. But if you want to grab a shirt or sweatshirt by Rhinebeck, make sure to order by September 16th to allow plenty of time for shipping. Happy shopping!